So, who are America's largest housing providers? Some shocking statistics.
Five, four, three, two, one, zero. Ignition. Liftoff.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Landlord Coach Daily-ish Show. It's good to see you. My name is Mark Dolfini, host of the Landlord Coach Daily-ish Show and Landlord Coach. It's good to see you all. Thank you for joining me today. So today we are going to be talking about who are America's biggest housing providers. Of course, now that the circus is done, we're going on to Act 2 of the entire political circus that we're all watching. I am trying to stay out of that as much as possible because that just seems to be like a giant time suck that only leads to me being pissed off at the end of the day. And quite frankly, I don't enjoy being pissed off. I just, that's why I've gone on a news fast until further notice, because quite frankly, most of that stuff just is inactionable and not relevant to me. So that's, but anyway, of course, being in this industry, of course, I stay plugged in. It's not like I just, completely out of it, because, eviction moratoriums and moratorium, moratori, eviction moratori is a thing, and as we keep talking about it, just extending the moratoriums and all this other stuff, not to make light of that, but it seems to be more prevalent on the coasts and certainly in the blue states about this growing groundswell of support that people are seeking to cancel rent. And of course, I don't think anybody's actually figuring out what that would mean and how that would trickle down and how that would basically grind the entire world economy to a halt if people just canceled rent. Sure sounds good, but does fuel tankers coming from one country to the next aren't going to press pause and just get parked in the middle of the ocean because someone doesn't want to pay rent, and the trickle down and trickle down and trickle down just does not ever stop. I don't think people have really thought that through as they're screaming with their cardboard sign that says cancel rent as they're screaming overhead. Have they really thought that through? It's a very popular thing. It's really something that, hashtag cancel rent. I totally get it. I understand people are hurting, but it just seems like, when I'm posting something on my page, I get a fair amount of, right now it tends to be a very unpopular position to be a landlord coach, to try to help people run more effective and efficient businesses so they can provide better value for their residents. Most of the people that I have ever talked to who are dealing with mom and pop landlords, they have a good relationship with their landlord. I mean, most of the times they do. It's generally the people who are running into problems. Of course, you're going to get your jerk faces out there regardless. I mean, you get jerks in every industry. But I think for the most part, I don't really hear a lot of people who say, man, I hate my landlord, this sort of thing. Well, are you hating them because of activities that they're doing? Or are you hating them because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing? It's certainly an opportunity for self-reflection. But, as I sit and I think about this, like, people who are screaming at canceling rent, most of the people that I hear from, it's a solution looking for a problem, where most of the residents, most of the people that I work with or the people that I talk to, they're not having an issue with their residents paying. And I think that's a testament to how they are running their businesses. And I think that's pretty cool. But you're going to, right now we're also sitting at a time where we have historically high amount of renters in the United States. And I think a little bit of that is that coming out of 2012, where maybe people are a little bit scared to buy. But, certainly not for lack of demand. I mean, housing is on fire right now, but, a lot of people are screaming cancel rent and things like that. Well, here's a reason. 37% of our nation are renters. 37% of our nation are renters. And the thing is, you're going to be really surprised when you hear who most of these people are renting from, because a lot of the cancel rent things, I think there's a misconception that these people are greedy, millionaires who are sitting on their yachts as they're, lighting, throwing their money around and lighting cigars with $100 bills. You're going to be shocked. So let's talk about who America is actually renting from. Out of the 37% of the population, which I think, if my math would be right, it'd be about 120 million people in the United States. I can't say 120 million Americans because, let's face it, that's that's a moving target. But let's say 120 people who are living in America out of the 325 million people living in America. Roughly 120 million of them, 121 million, I guess, of that would be that 37% that are renters. Okay. 74.4% of those rental properties are owned by mom and pop landlords. That would mean that basically they're owned by not corporate entities. Now, there are a fair number, right? The difference, obviously, we've made up of those who are owned by LLCs and corporations, which is also a little bit misleading, because if you are a professional investor, at some point in time, you're going to want to move your properties over to an LLC. You may only have 2 or 3 properties in that LLC, and I would still consider you a mom and pop landlord operation. So keep in mind that 74.4% may still be that mom and pop operation, that they're owned specifically under their name. But so individual investors is a little bit of a moving target here. But let's say 75, just let's say on a conservative estimate, 74.4% of rental property owners are mom and pop landlords. Half of them are self-managed, which means that for those of you who are out there who might not be a resident of a company, it could be managed by a property management company, which does not own the unit. They could still be owned by a mom and pop landlord who relies on that income, who may only own 1 or 2 or 3 units, but it's under the banner of a large property management group. That's not uncommon. In fact, roughly half of all of the properties, I think it's 45%, are self-managed. All the others would be managed by property management groups. Okay, so you have to think about this. So if they equate for 74.4% of all the rental properties that are owned, that accounts to about half of the units. So 47.8% of all the units that are being rented are rented by mom and pop landlords. Okay. And half of them are self-managed, half of them are managed by property managers. So, okay, so the other half are owned by big conglomerates. Okay, that I get that. But of 74% of all the rental properties that are owned that are owned by individual landlords, that means that on average, the average landlord owns about 3 units. Okay. So that would account to about 17 million properties, which would be about 23 million units altogether. All right. So as I'm doing the numbers on this, and Foremost Insurance Group was helpful in some of the information they compiled. Let me think of where else I got the U.S. Census. I checked on that. Porch.com was a good, and also My Smart Move. They also provide a lot of the data for this session here that I'm putting together. So here's what's interesting. I think people just have a misconception in terms of how easy or how hard it can be to be an individual property owner. And especially as there's, again, I get people that come to my page all the time. Landlords are scum. They're the lowest form of life. I mean, I've grown a pretty thick skin over the years. I mean, you're going to have to do better than that, because I've heard so much about, they're calling them slumlords and all this other, and some people do deserve that. Absolutely, they deserve that. And, sometimes I screw up, and, but if I was a coffee shop owner, would you call me those same names just because I maybe screwed up on your order? And I know people are fanatical about their coffee. So I think it's a little bit unfair. But 41%, and this came from Foremost, 41% of rental property owners experience some form of vacancy each year. So roughly every other year, you're going to have some form of vacancy, which could mean actual vacancy where the property sits empty, or economic vacancy where there's someone there and they're not paying. So, there is some sort of vacancy, or it could be a, property got damaged in a flood or fire and it's just uninhabitable. So then, of course, that would be a vacancy as well. So you've got all these, these numbers. And I threw about a bunch of statistics and stuff like that, but I really found that was really odd that, out of the 37% of the renters that are in America, that almost 75% of them are owned by rental property owners that are mom and pop landlords that own that own 3 or less on average. Here was the most shocking statistic that I found. I've got 2 more shocking statistics that really did shock me, because again, the whole cancel rent thing has been very, we don't want to subsidize landlords, these greedy landlords, these are millionaires, all this other stuff. Here's what really shocked me. 40% of the properties, of all the properties that are owned, are less than $200,000 in value. That's hardly wealthy. So again, if you're just doing it by the, even if you were doing it by the 2% rule, these people are not making a ton of money, right? They're not doing super duper well. So that means they might be making somewhere between $2,000 and maybe $4,000 in the year. So, or per month rather. That would be the 1% or 2% rule. If you're looking at 70%, total of 70%, so an additional 30% of that number own properties that are valued between $200,000 and $400,000. So that would mean that 70% of the properties that are owned are under $400,000 in value. That's hardly, again, a millionaire status. So roughly 7%, so we're talking about the very small minority, 7% own properties that are over $1 million or more. Very interesting. Again, that I believe that came from Porch. I don't remember exactly, but one of those sites that I listed earlier. And this was the one most shocking statistic that I found. Of all these owners, and again, this was actually from the IRS site. So I found that this was actually, and this was back in 2016. So the data are a little bit old. They're 5 years old as of right now. But I was really shocked at this. All of the average income of all of the rental property owners in this 75%, the average income was $93,000. Again, where's this windfall sum of money coming from? Now, granted, keep in mind, you do get the benefit of writing off non-cash deductions such as depreciation and amortization and mortgage interest and all that stuff. So that number is skewed a little bit. That's not the exact number that they're bringing in and live on, so that number could be higher. But we're not talking about $1 million incomes here. We're talking about people who are just trying to, maybe this is their source of retirement, that they're just trying to get there, to get to the promised land. So it's really funny when you put this in context. And I realize, the people who are going to watch this show are more likely going to be, I'm preaching to the choir, basically. I totally get that. But I think when you realize who the people really are and not who you think that they are, if you're providing housing, you're providing a good service. And there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. And I don't want you ever to question that. I don't think anybody who would be watching this would. But, for those people who maybe are, quick to jump on the bandwagon and start trashing and start sending me hate mail and all this other stuff, I want you to just think about it for just a second, that, again, and this kind of relates to my closing quote here. I'm just going to go ahead and unleash that. But before you try to set things straight, be sure that you see things straight. I wish I could tell you where that quote came from. I heard that literally like 25 years ago, and it never left me, because that was something that I tried to, that me being a self-righteous teenager who was a self-righteous 20-year-old, who was a self-righteous 30-year-old, who's a self-righteous 40-year-old. And now I'm probably a lot less self-righteous, a little bit at least. I'd like to not be a self-righteous 50-year-old. But this thing here, right, that quote right there, I don't know who said it, but man, there was a lot of wisdom there. And Again, maybe before you start jumping up and down and, claiming that there's people out there who are, that housing is a right and no one should be charging for housing and this and that. I don't know. I mean, the government gave a lot of, substantial tax benefits for so they didn't have to be in the housing business, because quite frankly, they suck at it. And leaving it open to the free market, that gives entrepreneurs opportunity to do that. Are there unscrupulous landlords? Of course. There's unscrupulous garage mechanics. There's unscrupulous people who sell, cell phones. There's unscrupulous people who sell Mona V out of the trunk of their car. There's unscrupulous people everywhere. But I just, if for maybe one or two of you that maybe watches this, that maybe would be open to just hearing what some of the truth is, these statistics, you're welcome to look them up on your own, because that's why I wanted you to have the website, so you can look them up on your own, so you can see what the truth really is. All right. That's all I have for today, everybody. Please be sure to place a value on your free time, because if you don't, someone else will. But most important, there is no amount of money that will make time irrelevant. Have an awesome day, and I will see you next time.